This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
G'day, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation, and I'm very excited to have with me from New York, Maren from Zirtual. Hey Maren, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. Very well. Thank you. Thanks for spending some time with us on the WP Elevation podcast. For those of you that don't know, Zirtual is a US-based virtual assistant service, which we're going to learn a little bit more about. But before we get into this interview, a quick announcement on a competition. I'm going to give away a $50 Amazon voucher for you to go and buy your favorite book. So stick around for details on how you can enter that competition a little bit later on. All right. Hey, Maren, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I first wanted to be a lawyer, and then I remember wanting to be in hedge funds. Even though I didn't know a lot about them, I just always thought they looked cool and the stock market was interesting to me. And then after that, I don't really remember. I just started to get into small business things, and yeah, that was that.
Cool. And when did you discover the web and online business?
Through starting my first eBay business when I was in college. I needed to optimize some of the things I was selling, and I wanted to get more traffic, so I started looking into creating blog websites and doing some paid online advertising.
Ah, cool. Now, before we start talking about Zirtual, did you ever work as a personal assistant yourself?
No, I mean, technically, I've worked as a Zirtual assistant because when I started Zirtual, I was the first Zirtual assistant until I hired a second one. But I was never a personal assistant or anything like that.
So you started Zirtual as a Zirtual assistant, and then when you got too busy, you hired someone else, and then it grew from there.
Yeah, it actually started as a company called Virtual Zeta, which was just an offshoot of my blog, and it was pretty much a website that matched people who were looking for Filipino virtual assistants. And then from there, the idea started evolving. I changed the name. I moved to San Francisco, and it turned more into the service it is today versus a one-off matching site.
Gotcha. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what made you want to escape the 9-to-5?
I mean, it's odd to say just because I never had like a typical 9-to-5. The closest thing I had to a 9-to-5 was the summer when I was 18. I worked in my parents' friend's office as I think I was like a secretary / file person, and it was like 3 months, and it was the longest 3 months of my life. I absolutely hated it. I just remember like literally being so depressed because it was really white and very bright. The lighting bothered me, and I just had 8 hours a day where I had to just sit around doing nothing, and it was just mind-numbingly boring. And I realized that I didn't want to do that with my life. And at the same time, I was never particularly great at school, and I knew that the whole lawyer thing wasn't going to happen since I didn't have the wherewithal to go through law school. And then I realized that lawyers actually do a lot of paperwork in offices, and I'm just too antsy to kind of be in one place for so it kind of happened organically, and I just thankfully never had to enter the 9-to-5.
So it kind of sounds like that, you know, being an entrepreneur and building your own thing kind of happened out of necessity because you just weren't cut out to work a job.
I think so. Necessity, and I've always been very interested in building businesses. Like, people that build businesses have always been fascinating to me. It's almost like some people are interested in architecture, building houses. Just the way people structure businesses and build out human organizations has always just been really interesting.
Do you remember when that kind of started when that fascination with business started? How did that come about?
I think I got a fascination with delegation or automation from a young age, just because, like, the one thing I remember is washing dishes at our little house in Texas. We didn't have a dishwasher, and it would drive me nuts because I would always wash the same dishes, and then they would get dirty again. And I remember asking Mom, like, could we use paper dishes, or could we get a dishwasher? And she said no, like, both were too expensive. But I tried to explain to her even at a young age, like, how little sense it made for us to spend time doing something that we just continue to do. And I always thought I was really lazy, and that might still be the case, actually. I don't necessarily know that's not true, but I was always interested in how I could not have to do repetitive things, and I think that's what drew me towards the virtual assistant delegation space.
Awesome. That's awesome. It reminds me of a joke about this little girl in primary school, and the punchline basically is we don't dry the dishes at home, we just wash them, put them on the rack, and let God dry them.
That's kind of funny. I'm going to use that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Zirtual. How do you describe what you do in one sentence? What's the elevator pitch when you meet someone new and they ask you what you do and what your business is?
We provide virtual assistants to busy entrepreneurs and professionals.
Cool. What do you actually spend most of your time doing day to day?
I do a lot of operational stuff, a little bit of marketing, a lot of strategic planning and compliance things. Right now we're in a big growth stage and we're hiring several directors. So while we don't have those directors, I'm kind of acting director of a few different departments. Everything from hiring, which is very big for us because we're bringing in new ZAs every single week in large quantities, and HR, things like that. I do a little bit of everything right now. In the next 3 to 6 months, I'll be able to get more narrow and focused, but right now, it's kind of all hands on deck.
Cool. Sounds like a typical kind of entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night?
My uncomfortable bed here in New York.
Good answer. How do you, before we talk a bit more about Zirtual, how do you chill out? What do you do when you're not working? How do you unwind?
I love to read and listen to audiobooks and podcasts. I like to wander the city. Smoking and drinking help. That would be the ways. I try to, like, I want to do yoga and Pilates in theory and more meditative stuff, but that hasn't really panned out thus far. Right. But one day.
At least you're honest about it. That's I really appreciate that. I admire that. All right, let's talk about remote workplaces or distributed workforces. What do you think the benefits are of remote staff?
Well, I mean, there's so many. One of the benefits is you don't have to pay for overhead for an office. The second benefit is you are not limited to a geographical location for where you can hire talented people. You can technically hire all over the world if you're a truly distributed remote workforce. The third is the personal benefits it gives the people that work for you and yourself. I'm spending 4 months in New York, and then I'm going back to the West Coast. But I get to travel just as much as the people that work for Zirtual because of the way we set it up. So those would be the 3 big ones I would see. I also think probably one additional thing is when you're distributed, you have to get really good at communication. When you're in an office building, you can spend a lot of time not doing anything, and it feels like you're doing something because you're in physical proximity to people. When you're working virtually, everything that's being done needs to be ironed out. It needs to be explained. It needs to be written down. There need to be protocols. I mean, you don't get to just kind of skate by on, busy work type of stuff. The only thing that matters when it's a distributed workforce is results.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I first started using Zirtual. I got a series of emails from you guys kind of teaching me how to delegate properly. And in fact, there was this fantastic boilerplate email that, was like, use this email to give your Zirtual assistant, actionables by a deadline. And I've been kind of out-tasking and outsourcing for like 5 years, and I reckon I learned more in the 10 minutes that I spent reading that email and using it than I've learned in the last 5 years. And it was, so how did that kind of, this service that you've got, which is an online business, but it seems to be integrated with some kind of best practice coaching and consulting built into it as well. How did that, who made the decision to do that, and how did that come about?
That would be a mixture of Joanna, who runs our invite system, my co-founder Eric and my co-founder Colin. Colin is really big into education. Eric's really big into design and aesthetics. What you saw Eric probably design and Joanna and Colin probably worked on. We have a new client delegation tour. They can take this online thing. We do delegation consultations with our new client ambassador team, but they've pretty much built that out.
Because I think that was one of the things that for me really cemented my success with Zirtual in those first 7 days, really. And I think that's the critical time that if someone's going to activate the service and get results out of it. And it was just, I really felt like I was having my hand held and guided through the whole process, and it was a world-class experience. It was really fantastic.
I love it. That's awesome. It's really good to hear. I'll look into it.
So, do you think the Zirtual assistants are generally a certain type of person or a certain type of personality?
Yeah, there's definitely, the type of personality is people that really enjoy helping other people, people that are excited about solving a problem for someone else. People pleasers is kind of the personality, but also people that are highly qualified, highly skilled, and enjoy fixing problems for others. And then the types of people that are assistants can range from college students to retirees to stay-at-home moms. We have a lot of stay-at-home moms and dads, people that want to work virtually for whatever reason. Maybe they're traveling. We just had a Zirtual assistant who was named, what was it, Hershey?
National Geographic Traveler of the Year.
National Geographic Traveler of the Year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really rad. I didn't know about it till today. Shoshana just told me. But yeah, it's very diversified.
Cool. How do you make sure that the ZAs that you find are a good fit for your service and also a good fit for the client? Because if I'm not mistaken, you don't meet all of your ZAs, right?
No, I can count on two hands how many ZAs I've met, and we have several hundred. It's a pretty thorough hiring process that we put them through. There's I think 9 steps. It takes several weeks. We hire about 2 to 3% of the people who apply, and then we put them through certification, which is another 3 to 4 weeks worth of training, and then they go to a little pool. We call it a pod, where they have a manager, and that manager gets to know each one of them. So when you come on as a client and you request in your feedback form, I need X, Y, and Z, the manager is like, oh, you know who's great at that? Jane, or something like that.
So, and this is really, it's really apparent that there is this awesome screening process, because when I've outsourced in the past to the Philippines, you usually end up with 3 or 4 on a short list, and then you have to interview them. And with you guys, I just told you what I wanted, and you just made a decision for me. You're like, yep, okay, cool. 3 days later, it was like, meet Kristen. She's your new assistant, and you guys should talk on Skype and get to know each other. And I was like, wow, okay, this is a big leap of faith. I'm going to, just trust you guys. And, of course, it turned out that she's awesome, and I wish, if I'd known what I know now, I wish I'd done this 6 months ago. But I was just blown away at how much you found the right person based on the brief that I gave you.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's just a testament to our managers and our people. We try to screen for really quality people, and we try to get a good understanding of them so we can match well.
Well, it's working. What are there's some interesting stuff on your website about the kinds of things that you can outsource and the kind of things that you can't. So and I'll let people discover that for themselves, because it's kind of funny. But what are a couple of the craziest tasks that clients have assigned or tried to assign?
Managing girlfriends is one. That always comes back. We had somebody once who requested that their ZA help schedule, I think it was 10 different women. They were supposedly all in a monogamous relationship.
Oh my God.
I know, that was very odd. That was before we had our core values up, one of which is honesty. So if the ZA is not comfortable or whatever, we're like, hey, we don't need to do this. But, sometimes it's I want to get Oprah's private line. And you're like, we'll try. And, they can make a really good effort, but it just depends. Or, a big romantic gesture organized last minute, but it's actually surprising how many things people request and will actually be able to handle. And the ZA pulls through at the last minute. I'm always surprised by it. I assign stuff that's, like hard all the time, and I always am blown away by the responses I get.
Wow. And so, just at a high level, what kind of percentage do you reckon is being assigned that is business related, and what percentage is personal related?
I'd say 70% of our requests are business related, probably 30 are personal.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, let's talk about you for a moment. Being the founder of Zirtual and kind of the face of Zirtual, whether you like it or not, you've kind of got this public internet profile now. How has that changed things for you, or what do you like or dislike about having a public internet profile?
I mean, it hasn't really changed very much. I'm not active on that stuff. Like, I don't keep up with my Twitter. I barely use Facebook. I'm very unaware of whatever public Twitter type stuff. I mean, I think I was a lot more involved in it when I was blogging actively, but I'm so heads down now. I pretty much hang out at home and go out within our neighborhood and do stuff like that. If I'm at conferences and different events like that where there's more entrepreneurial type people, it's always interesting to meet other entrepreneurs, but day to day it doesn't really affect anything. It's cool that people will reach out to me more willingly for feedback, for whatever. That's always fun. But yeah, I try to be very accessible, especially to our Zirtual clients, because I always want to learn what's working for them and what's not.
Cool. And you've got a bit of positive attention in the media lately. How's that feel as an entrepreneur and a business owner to know that your business is getting this kind of attention?
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was gratifying. It's been good, but it's just, yeah, I mean, it's been good. It's been really nice. It's always fun to see cool articles that highlights the company and things like that. And yeah.
Cool. What's the future for Zirtual and the kind of virtual assistant concept?
Well, I mean, I think the concept of virtual assistant expands past assistant versus virtual worker. I think more and more the world is moving to a more globalized kind of workforce that's really perfectly suited for distributed labor. I mean, we want to eventually not only have virtual assistants, but virtual experts who are virtual workers who are really good at specific types of things, be it bookkeeping, design, finance, etc. And then that's kind of where the future of Zirtual lays. Like, we don't plan to flip our company or sell to a bigger company. Like, our goal really is to grow this into something that outlasts us and that does something very positive and kind of changes the way that people work, both our clients and our internal people, because it allows our internal people to work virtually, to have that freedom, have that purpose and that community within their company, and it allows our clients to get more done, to be more productive, to also have more freedom. And I think it's kind of an awesome thing that it provides a real good on both sides.
That sounds exciting.
So we need to grow it as widespread as we possibly can and affect the most people.
Seth Godin talks a lot about the kind of traditional education system churning out well-behaved, conforming robots that then go and get a job in a cubicle, and the whole that whole kind of industrial complex. Jason Fried from 37 Signals gave a great TED talk about how the office is not the place to get work done. So this whole distributed workforce and remote workforce thing, do you think that as the kind of big corporate landscape changes, do you think that this will become more of the norm, or do you think that it's always going to be just the outliers and the kind of early adopters that use this kind of model?
I think it will completely become the norm. It makes sense financially, and it makes sense economically, and it also, as the world grows and there's more communication, there's better connectivity, people don't have to stay in the same place. If they don't have to stay in the same place, there's very few reasons for big companies to force them to keep that. So I think it's absolutely the way things are going.
And do you think, I was talking to someone recently who their company kind of instigated the fact that, you know, you can work from home a couple of days a week if you want. Do you think that more and more companies are going to do that kind of thing to encourage that kind of culture in order to attract good staff?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies already do it, but I think companies will start doing it more and more, either for a cultural point of view or for the cost savings.
Mm. Cool. Just before we wrap up, I'm going to announce this competition. We were speaking before the interview about the kind of services or partners that Zirtual could partner with to bring an even better service to Zirtual clients. I'm going to give you an example of how that might work. So we use a product called Suite Process, which is a product that allows you to put together beautiful standard operating procedures for your team to follow. And the interface is absolutely gorgeous. So the way this works for me now is when I do a task, I video myself doing the task on a screencast. I send that to Kristen, my assistant, and she then turns that into a process with screenshots and writes it up and stores that in Suite Process. So then any of our virtual assistants, either Kristen here or our Filipino staff, they can follow that process that Kristen has made from my video. And that's a really nice system that I've got going on, and it's allowed me to accelerate how much I can delegate. So Suite Process, for example, is an obvious match for Zirtual in my mind. But what we're interested here is to get you guys listening to this and watching this podcast to leave us some comments underneath the video and tell us what kind of service you'd like to see matched with Zirtual. So it might be a bookkeeping service or bookkeeping software, or it could be, you know, it could be Uber, the car service, it could be a laundry service, whatever. What kind of service do you think would be a good match for Zirtual to partner up with to bring an even better offering to you guys? So leave us some comments under the video. I'll get Maren to swing by in a week's time and award the winner, and you'll pick up a $50 Amazon voucher to go and buy your favorite book. How's that sound, Maren? Good?
That sounds great.
Cool. Hey, what's the number? I didn't want to get into the whole kind of gender thing here, but you are the first female entrepreneur we've had on this podcast.
Really?
How have you found being a female entrepreneur? Has it made any difference at all? Is there any particular challenges that you've had, or?
There's challenges, but I think it's just as much as anybody has. They're just always going to be a little bit different. But I mean, I don't know. I find it great. I'm always the minority when I'm in meetings and things like that, and that never hurts. It makes it interesting. So I don't know. A lot of people seem to think that it's harder. I haven't seen it. It's been fine. I think, you know, you just kind of use what you have, and that's about that.
Cool.
I mean, it's good. It'd always be good to get more people into it, but I think a lot of it seems like there's more and more of a push for female entrepreneurs, female engineers, things like that. I see more and more of them all the time. I mean, it's funny because Zirtual is like I want to say 80% female company. So I don't see it as much because we're like women all the time. But at the same time, my executive team is 4 people, and I'm the only woman on that team. So that's a good point. And my board is all men. And yeah, there's definitely a minority, especially within the tech and internet space. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting.
This might be a really stereotypical question, but when I was thinking about getting a Zirtual assistant, in the back of my mind, for some reason, I felt like I wanted a female because they just seem more organized than men. Is that true, or is that just a myth?
I mean, it's just my, I don't have any facts to base this on, but the best COOs I've ever met have always been female. I think the women I've met are more organized, they're more emotionally intuitive, they're more detail focused, and really can kind of dig in there and get things done. I don't know if that's across the board true, but it's what we've noticed. But I mean, we also have ZAs that are dudes that are amazing as well. We have managers that are guys. We have all sorts. But I think it's more the type of person, the detail-oriented person, the person that wants to please, that's very intuitive of their clients' needs and of other people's needs that we attract. And that type of person always does an amazing job.
Yeah. And your Zirtual assistants are all US-based, is that right?
Yep.
Cool. Why was that? Just so that you could get to know them and screen them and get the right people?
I think it's nice to have people that understand your culture. Well, it's nice to have people in your time zone. It's nice to have people that understand your culture. When we grow and we go internationally, well, obviously we have international clients, but all of our assistants are still U.S. based. Once we get to a point where we can expand internationally, I'd love to have Zirtual assistants who are in South Africa and work with South African clients, so they're on the same time zone, they understand the same cultural intricacies, or if we have Chinese Zirtual assistants working with Chinese clients, because there's just a lot of stuff that gets lost in translation. And I know this from working with a lot of offshore virtual assistants in the beginning. And I just kind of like the idea of keeping jobs within, your kind of area. There's a lot of stuff that offshoring is great for, but sometimes it's nice to have someone who's closer to you physically, who understands the intricacies, who can see a word and understand that you're being jovial or that you seriously mean X, Y, and Z, things like that.
Yeah, I got to say, as an Australian, most of our customers are actually US based, and culturally, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that I don't even need to communicate with Kristen because she just gets it, because we have very similar cultures. But also being in a different time zone, because I live in Australia, even though I'm in San Francisco right now interviewing you, which is kind of weird. But living in Australia, it's great because I go to bed and while I'm asleep, Kristen's working away, doing stuff, organising a whole bunch of stuff, and I wake up and all this stuff's done, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's some of the things I used to love with working with people in the Philippines. I'd go to bed in the morning, my inbox would be full of goodness.
Yeah, it's great. All right, just before we wrap up, what's the number one piece of advice you would give any entrepreneur trying to build their own business?
All right, this is going to sound really corny, but you're going to hear laughter from the background possibly, because there's other people here, and I say this all the time. But there's this PDF that you can get online. It's called Principles by Ray Dalio. He's one of the, you can hear my boyfriend laughing in the background. I talk about it all the time. But he's one of the leading hedge fund managers in the country, and he's actually really, really focused on a culture and building a business based on culture, but also based on data. It's about 120 pages. It's free. It's online. If I wish I had read that when I first started. It is so chock full of just really applicable advice, and it's an internal thing for Bridgewater, the hedge fund, but it's available online and it can be applied to almost any industry. So I would say read that. And then the second piece of advice would just be read everything you can get your hands on, especially if it has to do with successful people that are written about them or by them, and just pattern recognition.
Yeah, awesome. So the Principles by, who's the author? Ray
Dalio.
Ray Dalio. Okay, I'm going to find that and put a link to that in the show notes. What kinds of people do you think can benefit most from the Zirtual service?
Entrepreneurs, small business owners, professionals who need a little bit of support, whether they're a consultant or working in an office where they just don't have an admin. Those are the people that we have the most of, and that's what we notice, gets a ton from it. But at the same time, we have couples that will use their Zirtual assistant as kind of their home manager and to liaison with their nanny and the school district or whatever. So there's a wide variety, but the ones that typically get the absolute most out of it would be early stage entrepreneurs, because you don't have a big team, and having that one or two people working with you can really skyrocket your success.
Yeah, which is another great tip for any entrepreneur starting out, is just surround yourself with good people and build a team early, because otherwise you just burn out and burn out and kill yourself trying to do everything yourself. Having a good team and good people is crucial. Hey Maren, where can people reach out to you to thank you for your time here?
I'm easily accessible through email. It's just Maren, which is spelled like Karen but with an M, at Zirtual, which is spelled like virtual but with a Z.
Awesome. You've rehearsed that, haven't you?
I said it so many times.
That's fantastic. Finally, who would you like me to try and interview and why?
Ray Dalio, because I love him.
Okay. All right, done. Hey, Maren, thank you very much for spending some time with us on the WP Elevation podcast. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best for the future of Zirtual, and thank you for providing us with such an awesome service.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Cool. Cheers.